we are starting up with the revision series of the chapters that we already covered. So this series, as you could see on the screen, that these are the handwritten notes, and these notes are the short version of the entire NCRT text which we already read. If you want word by word detailed reading of NCRT session, then you can refer to those in the playlist of class 11th NCRT. So we are starting with the revision series of class 11 geography NCRT. The first chapter is climate, structure and composition of atmosphere. So it won't be as detailed or the like build up which was built in NCRT. This is in a pointers form. It is only it only includes facts with it and the important points with it. Okay, so the first point is atmosphere envelops the earth's surface. It contains various gases, water vapors and dust particles. So what they're telling about the like how in NCRT it is built up about the idea of the atmosphere. Like what is atmosphere about? So it is the one which covers the entire earth surface. So like if this is our earth, so the entire surface is covered by the atmosphere. It contains various gases. It also includes water vapor and dust particles. And if we talk about the atmosphere, the mass of the atmosphere, 99% of it is present within the 32 kilometers range from the earth's surface. So 32 kilometers mean 99% of the atmosphere हमें देखने को मिलता है. Now if we talk about the composition of the atmosphere in NCRT, this percentage isn't mentioned, but for your like idea, I mentioned it. That is nitrogen is 78%. So the maximum gas that is found. तो ये MCQ में है. This question is asked in like when you look up the exercise part, there it's mentioned that which gas is max. So nitrogen is the one which is maximum. Then we have oxygen 21%. Then further like this the division happens. So the idea which is like the point which is provided by the composition of under the topic composition of atmosphere in NCRT is about CO2. So this is very important point, like how it changes its uh, like character when it is there put in different situations. What I want to say is simply that it become transparent to the insolation, means जो solar radiations, the solar radiations which are coming to the earth surface, तो उनके लिए वो transparent है. What do you mean by this transparency that it shows? Means it let the solar radiations easily come inside the earth, right? Yes, but it is opaque to the outgoing terrestrial radiations, means the infrared radiations. अब earth surface पे आई हैं radiations, now they'll reflect back. अब ये हमारी terrestrial radiations है, इसके लिए क्या है opaque, so it won't let them to go out. So what basically happens here, it absorbs the part of terrestrial radiations and it also reflect back some part. तो दो पॉइंट आपको याद रखना है. सबसे पहले कि कैसे कैसे ये बिहेव करते हैं टू द इंसुलेशन ऑफ द इंफ्रारेड रेडिएशन. सबसे पहले इट इज ट्रांसपेरेंट to the insulation, but it is opaque to the outgoing terrestrial radiations. Then the second point is what happens because of this. Now because of this this opaque nature of CO2 towards terrestrial radiations, we could see that there is an absorption of these terrestrial radiations and also reflection, like they are being reflected back, right? And this is the reason because of which we could see the greenhouse effect. So that is why when the question is asked that which gas uh, yeah so which gas is the major reason of causing the greenhouse effect, that is carbon dioxide. Okay, why? Now why is answered here. Why this happens? We know that greenhouse effect किसी वजह से हो रहा है, CO2 की वजह से हो रहा है. Great. Then why it happens? Because of this opaque nature which it shows towards the terrestrial radiations. Then we have the second point that is provided, that of the ozone layer. So this ozone, now again I'm reminding you the point that we are talking about the composition of the atmosphere. So first topic under the composition of the atmosphere we did of carbon dioxide. The second is ozone. It's a small like point which is mentioned in NCRT that it is there within 10 to 15 kilometers of the range. Now in this range what happens, like which sphere is there, that is stratosphere. Structures of atmosphere जो हम study करेंगे, we'll get to know about it. And why it is important, because it is there to absorb the UV rays, that is the ultraviolet rays that is coming from the sun. Then under the composition of the atmosphere, the third important point that we have is water vapors. Now the funda that they have explained about the water vapors, the first, that is they decrease with height. So as you go above, you can see that there is less amount of water vapors provided. Also the important point that they decrease from equator to poles. Now what does this mean that they decrease from equators to pole? तो कहाँ पे where they'll be in more amount? At the equator. So at equators there are like maximum like not maximum, there is more volume of water vapors presented as compared to that of the poles. Now, if we talk about the two different points that they have mentioned in NCRT is the warm and the wet tropics, that is 4% of the air by volume. So what does this mean? Basically, this is in short written there. So in warm and wet tropics, 4% of the air is that covered by the water vapors, and in desert and polar region it is 1% of the air. So 1% of the air there is present water vapor, but if we see the warm and the wet tropics, there it is 4%. Okay, and what happens because of this water vapors? They play a dual role. They do provide stability, they also provide instability. Now the two of the points are explained. Now stability, how they provide stability? Because they trap up the heat. So they are water vapors. So what all heat? As we could see that, see, don't think that only CO2 is the one which is acting as a opaque to the outgoing terrestrial radiation, and no other phenomena is there in the atmosphere which does the same. No, if water vapors are there present in the environment, so they'll also react in a way towards your insulation and towards your terrestrial radiations. So if there are water vapors, think of like they'll obviously trap the insulation, and they do have the ability to trap the terrestrial radiations. So that is the reason they traps up the heat, right? And they traps up the heat. So second idea that we could put up by ourselves, that is the absorption of heat. So they absorb the excessive heat that is present, and latent heat, they release out the latent heat. So these three things, these three brief ideas that are explained, because of which they provides the stability. Now what instability they could cause? They could cause storm or cloud formation, because of which, yes, no, cloud formation is not we can consider an instability, but yes, maximum amount of cloud formation can like create instability. Yes, okay. So water vapors idea is done. Let's move ahead with dust particles. Now dust particles are also the part which comes under the composition of the atmosphere, and these are very important. See what dust particles includes of all, like the sea salt, the fine salt, the smoke, what is this root? Okay, ash, pollen, dust, and then we have disintegrated particles of meteors. So these all are included in the dust particles layer. Okay, and the one idea that they're providing, that they're generally concentrated in the lower layer. What does they mean by the lower layer? Basically troposphere में देखो, ट्रोपोस्फेयर में वी कुड फाइंड आउट मोस्ट ऑफ दिस आइडिया, क्योंकि 32 किलोमीटर्स की रेंज उन्होंने स्पेसिफाई कर दी है ऑलरेडी अबाउट द एटमोसफेयर. लाइक 99% मास ऑफ द एटमोसफेयर इज प्रेजेंट इन द 32 kilometers near range, that to the surface of the earth. So we could understand the part that where these dust particles, like maximum amount of dust particles, water vapors, ozone, or carbon dioxide are present, right? Okay, so you have the dust particles. Now this is the hashtag, so it means it is an important point. What it says, that dust particles act as a hygroscopic nuclei around which the water vapors condenses to produce clouds. So this is the point which we could say is important. Uh, yes, this is the important point. Just let, no, you are already, I just drop a message there. Yeah, so this is the point which is important. Uh, like this is very important because this is not discussed. Like this point is neither been discussed in any of your junior classes. That is why it makes it important. So what they say is that it acts as a hygroscopic nuclei. So what is a hygroscopic nuclei? Basically, this refers to the yes, it refers to the now you already know the part of nuclei from your science. Hygroscopic nuclei, what they mean to say by hygroscopic means they attract the water molecule. Okay. Yes, and this is the idea that they want to present it कि अब nuclei is like a small round circle. Hygroscopic से उनका idea है कि जो attract करता है water molecules को, तो dust particle है वो hygroscopic nuclei की तरह काम करता है, around which the water vapors condense to produce clouds. Now this they provide, the dust particles provide the water vapors the surface to condense. So this we cannot put this point around that dust particles, these are like not important, and like if this question can be formed that if dust particles won't be present in the atmosphere, it won't create any sort of disturbance in the nomenclature of the atmosphere, the weather or the climate that happens. But no, it does. Okay, yes. Why? The reason is clear. Because to condense, because water vapors condenses to produce the clouds, and this the medium or the surface that is provided to them is by dust particles. Then we have the structure of the atmosphere. Now coming to the structure of the atmosphere, so one point that is provided before, like in the introduction, that is density is highest near surface of the earth and decreases with increasing altitude. Now what does they mean? Now density, the idea we already discussed this mass wala part. Now they are telling it in a like a स्मॉल सेंस कैसे कि भाई ज़्यादा कंसेंट्रेशन ऑफ एटमॉस्फेयर, ये जो सारा इसका कंपोजिशन है ये ज़्यादा है towards the surface of the earth as compared to the surface which is like away from the surface of the earth. And this is the idea that they are presented. और यहीं पे आ जाते हैं हमारे structures of the atmosphere. The first sphere, that is troposphere. Now troposphere is the closest towards the earth's surface, and if we talk about the range, that is the average of troposphere is 13 kilometers. Okay, yes. And because yeah, and this and one important point though that to be noted is that it contains the dust particles and water vapors. So all changes, now this point is important, all changes in climate and weather takes here biological activities takes place here. So all changes in climates and weather takes here surface, all biological activities that are conducted, these are conducted in this surface itself. And there's a temperature decrease, like 1 degree Celsius decrease could be seen for every 165 meters. Okay, then the second layer, that is the troposphere. This is itself, like this we already read, and this is not much, this is the one which does not play such an important role. But one point that you need to be note down, that is about the difference. Like if you could see that average troposphere, we could see that it's 13 kilometers, but at poles it is 8 kilometers and at equator it is 18. So what is the reason why this happens? So because heat is transported to greater heights by strong convectional currents, and this is the reason of this point. Now this point is like a factual part, like 8 kilometers है troposphere, like उसकी range 8 kilometers है pole पे, but it is 18 kilometers equator. But the reason behind it, it should be clear to you, and it is the one which will be asked for any of the competitive exams, because these things we already know about the troposphere. Then troposphere, there's a tropopause. Tropopause is a layer which separates your stratosphere and troposphere. Also यहाँ पे जो temperature होता है, that is constant, that is stable, that is why we called it tropopause. And yes, they also mentioned that 80 degree Celsius wala point, and 80 degrees Celsius at equator and minus 45 degrees Celsius at poles. This is the temperature that they have mentioned. Then we come to the stratosphere, that is like from the surface of the earth, it's like 18 kilometers from the surface of the earth. And in this layer, ozone layer is present. So ozone layer का range क्या था, 10 to 50 था. So we can obviously see that कहाँ पे वो lie करेगा. And then again there is stratopause. Uh, then we have mesosphere. Now mesosphere, important points that we need to note down is that now this is important. Till here the temperatures start decreasing with height. Now what is the nature, nomenclature of temperature? That it starts decreasing with height. As soon like higher the altitude, lesser the temperature will be. Like this is the phenomena. But this phenomena changes as soon as we enter into ionosphere. Because what happens here? Basically the temperature starts increasing with height. So the funda, the nomenclature of temperature that we used to know, that as the altitude increases, the temperature decreases. Here the temperature starts increasing with the increase in height. Okay, so this question could be framed that in which sphere this funda could be seen, right? Yes. And why this is known as ionosphere? Because it contains the it contains the electrically charged particles that are known as ions. So that is why it is known as ionosphere. Also, radio waves transmitted from the earth, they are reflected back in ionosphere itself. So that was it for the revision session. Although in revision session we also did a detailed concept, like beyond this no question could be framed so far.